The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Hey, good morning. This is Arlene, and you're listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. And today, kicking start our ASEAN breakfast call today, we have a really interesting segment of top 10 ASEAN news, as well as the blast from the grassroots, as well as our ASEAN breakfast call dialogue. And you can always keeping up with us via Facebook, which is durianasean.com, as well as our website, which is the same link, the same name, which is durianasean.com as well. You can also follow us on Twitter, Durian ASEAN, and you can always send us an email. You can send us at my email, arlene at durianfm.com. It spells as ARLENE at durianfm, DURIAN, fm.com. And let us know what is in your mind and what do you think of our channel, and just share with us, comment to our post, and hope that you can be filled with a lot of interesting news, interesting discussion from Southeast Asia. So kicking start our news today, I just want to let you know that the World Cup 2014 is coming up very, very soon, and it will be aired live in Malaysia at 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Oh, yeah, tomorrow is actually. So for those Malaysian, they would probably stay late at night in the wee hour to watch the World Cup, Brazil versus Croatia. But before we continue, all this discussion about World Cup, I think it is better for me to just continue our real discussion today, which is about our ASEAN Breakfast Call top 10, top ASEAN news of today. So the first news is actually from Singapore's Today's Online. So the headline goes as Singapore offers assistance to Indonesia, Malaysia to combat haze. I'm sorry. So the haze issue in this region is actually quite bad, and it has been a yearly event. I mean, all of us probably has experienced a couple of months ago a really bad haze, and the origin of this haze, a lot of people say is from the forest, but I think it has a lot of different factors that sort of add more density towards the haze itself. So the summary of the story was, in anticipation of the coming dry season, Singapore has offered assistance to Indonesia and Malaysia to combat possible land and forest fires. It was stated by Singapore's Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, or MEWR. And the ministry said haze from such fires during the traditional dry season from June to October has been a perennial problem in the southern part of Southeast Asia region in the past decades, which is true. I mean, not just the past decade. If everyone knows, during the 90s, late 90s, also they were one time, I still remember, because I was a school kid at that time during the 90s, how bad was the haze at that time, and it still keep on continuing. It has become quite a yearly event, unfortunately, and a lot of speculation has been said that this is probably due to mainly illegal land clearing and slash and burn agricultural practices in Indonesia, particularly Sumatra and Kalimantan. So it was when journalists asked whether the offers has been taken out or whether Singapore was prepared to provide more help if needed, the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources said that they actually have made the offer, and it is a standing offer, and they would happy to assist if they find it helpful. And I think it is quite proactive of Singapore to provide such support, and I think Singapore will be the most badly hurt when it comes to environmental issues such as haze, because due to the Singapore being a very tiny land stuck in the middle of giants like Malaysia and Indonesia. And at the same time, I think Singapore probably has the equipment and the know-how in terms of how to tackle environmental issues such as, haze and all, and pollution and all that. And I think it's very good that there's some sort of transnational cooperation between all these three countries. Especially all these three countries are quite interrelated and interconnected with each other. Like probably from the southern part, it would be more of the Mekong River region, where this country will be much more have a much more shared issues compared to regions from the southern part. And I think Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore should probably cooperate with more. Probably should have more cooperation with more issues that is facing by all these three countries, and of course, environmental is one of it. And moving on to our next country that we want to report is about child labor up in typhoon hit areas in Philippines. It was reported by this news outlet called CHRON. CHRON. And the United States Labor Agency says a study has found more children toiling in harsh and dangerous work in Philippines village hit by Typhoon Haiyan last November. And the International Labour Organization said Tuesday that a joint assessment made in March and April by the United Nations and other humanitarian organizations and Philippine authorities showed 54% and 112 surveyed villages reported that children there were involved in harsh and dangerous labor, with 39% of them saying that the number of such children increased after the typhoon hit. It was reported that the typhoon actually killed more than 6,300 people, which I think is a huge number of people, and displaced 4 million others, worsening poverty in the central Philippines, while the villages and the 125 schools surveyed were randomly selected from 2 central regions most affected by Haiyan. It's quite sad that even though the typhoon was struck last November, there are still problems there, and child labor is definitely one of the prop-up issues in that typhoon hit area in typhoon hit area in central Philippines. And it's interesting that child labor is still very much a huge issue in Southeast Asia, and especially in countries that is much more less developed in Southeast Asia. And I think, of course, Philippines is one of it. Like, I've been to Philippines once a couple of years ago, and I was shocked by the number of street kids there. The same thing in Jakarta as well when I went there. So I think in terms of child protection, is definitely should be the number one agenda of Southeast Asia. It seems like a lot of issues related to population and especially related to children and women should be the main priority of the not just the United Nations but ASEAN itself. Although I may have to applaud ASEAN for signing one of their declaration, which is on the protection of women and children. Moving on to the next one from Philippines, we talk about the issue of beca drivers, child name best graduates, and this is actually a news in Indonesia. The headline was actually from Jakarta Post. So this person called Mugiono, a beca driver. Actually, a beca is called pedicab. It's like you have like a small seat or a small carriage where someone will cycle you to the destination that you want to go. It's either cycle you to the destination, or actually the person will physically carry the whole carriage and yourself to the destination that you want to go. So that's the unique thing about beca, or in English called pedicab. So the pedicab driver in the central Java city of Semarang, burst into tears when his youngest daughter, Rini, 25-year-old, graduated with an undergraduate degree in accounting from the Semarang State University, earning a performing index of 3.96. Oh, that's a very good performing index, in my own opinion. So the Semarang State University rector, Fatur Rahman, praised Rini for her achievement. It turns out that economic hardship is not necessarily a hindrance, preventing a person from realizing his or her dreams. And Rini has proven that, though she would be welcome to pursue her as to here. Looking at her achievements and her spirit, I would encourage her to continue her studies overseas. That was stated by the rector himself. And Rainy plans to travel to Japan as part of the student exchange program in the near future. Well, the hair presents the wing might be sensitive to the aesthetic. Oh no, that's another news altogether that was reported. But anyway, it's quite interesting that this kind of like rag to riches story is still prevalent in today's culture in Southeast Asia. I mean, taking for example of this person, Rini, and she come from a very poor background, but that did not deter her to pursue her study, her tertiary education, and actually become one of the best students there. 3.96 is actually quite a good achievement in terms of her grades. And for Mugiono, I think what separates a person to another person, of course, a socio-economic background matters a lot. I mean, if you come from a family that is well equipped, a lot of facilities, resources, especially financial resources, no matter how slack you are, you would definitely be able to move on further in life compared to if you are very constrained in terms of resources and financial resources, and all you have is your own physicality and the kindness of the community to help you. So in that sense, it's definitely harder for people from a poor background to excel in their studies, even though she managed to do it. But I think it's better for society to actually, or for government to create an level playing field and an equal opportunity for all in terms of pursuing education, further education especially. And moving on to Malaysia again, we want to report about Malaysia being swamped by giant moth. That was reported by BBC. Swarms of giant moth disrupt a national football match in Malaysia. So experts say that while the sighting of the Lisa Sump, commonly known as Lau Brown, is common amount, and the amount has been unprecedented this time around. Attracted by lights and uneaten plants, these migrating moths are present in small number during other times of the year. This moth interrupted a semi-final match at Darul Makmur Stadium last week. And rapid urbanization not only attracted people but also moth, which is it's actually a joke. While being sensitive to ecological settings is definitely very important and very crucial. But it's kind of interesting to see all these insects and bugs to sort of migrate and sort of migrate to actually to cities and to places where there's a lot of human beings. And I think it's kind of interesting to actually sort of like put a thought on it, on nature, on the environment. I mean, I personally have no idea why the giant moth attacked the stadium. I have no idea. Probably there's a reason for it, but I think a reflection on our ecology and being sensitive to our environment is very important. And definitely I will look up to what is all about. I mean, why the giant moth suddenly just want to migrate and come during this time, and to the stadium in particular. So there will be a very interesting knowledge to know about it. So moving on from a giant moth, we talk about something that is much more pressing. It's about religious freedom, and it was reported by the Malaysian Times. The daughters of that the daughter fights back for mother's religious status. That was the headline. And the daughter of a deceased ethnic Chinese woman whose body was seized by the authority has filed a case against the Penang Islamic Council, or MAIPP, or MAIP, claimed that her mother never converted to Islam. Actually, the background of the story is quite some time ago. Is related to this one Chinese lady when she was younger. I think it was when she was still in her 20s. She befriended a Muslim Malay man, and they fell in love. They secretly got married, and she converted to Islam. But the interesting part is, throughout her life, there were no problem. There were about it, and the Islamic authority never took any actions about it. In fact, it stayed very silent until the day when she died. The day when the family of the deceased have to report about her death. That's where suddenly the Penang Islamic Council claimed the body while the family was actually mourning the deceased and was performing religious prayers towards it. And it's a lot of questions were being raised. I mean, is it ethical? Is it Islamic at all? Is it part of the religious teaching to sort of ensure that all Muslims should be buried in in a specific place, and about identifying who is a Muslim or who is Islam? Because in Malaysia, identification card is definitely one of the key sort of identification of your religion. And when I say religion, it's only so related to the Islamic religion. But the question is also like, is it something that should be encouraged, being identified of your own religion via your identification card? Or should religion be personal? Should it be between you and God? Should the state even meddle with religion itself? So coming back to the story, according to the daughter, Madeline Teo, her deceased mother, Teo Ching Ching, did not proclaim the faith of Islam. So there's a conflict here. It's like, the family said she never practiced it, but then the Penang State Council said, but her IC stated that she is a Muslim. So Miss Teo claimed that although her mother filed an application to convert, she did not receive a certificate from the authority. Reports claim that Mrs. Ching committed suicide after some dispute with her boyfriend. So this is actually very sad because, how can someone who has died should be, a cause of conflict between the victim families and the government? It should be, she should be peacefully buried, and just ensure that everything is in peace and all that, instead of having the state to determine that, oh no, she cannot be buried here, she should be buried somewhere else, and you have no right to worship or to pray for her. So I don't think that's ethically right. But at the same time, I also see the perspective of the religious authority in the sense that they see it as their religious duty, as a state religious duty to do whatever, God's commands is, even though they might have, their own interpretation of what it means to follow, God's rules. So that it is. Anyway, moving on to Myanmar, also related to religion. So it was reported by Mizima. And the story goes, the monastery raided to regain control of property, it was said by a minister in Burma. So authorities in Burma evacuated the Mahasantik Ka Monastery as tensions run high regarding the ownership of the monastery. Disputes between the Penang Satwa, the head abbot of the monk, and the state Sangha go back to 2004 when the junta headed the ownership of the state Sangha. However, President Yu Tenzin handed it back to Penang Sangyadao in October last year. This latest step aligned with the demand of the state Sangha to hand over the monastery back to them. Some observers argue that the step is politically charged as Penang Sayadaw had been adamant to maintain control over the monastery. Sayadaw is currently in a lecture tour in Japan, and personally, I think a government interference in Buddhist institution was one of the key reasons behind the Saffron Revolution in 2007, where a group of monks and together with students actually staged a revolution or a protest against the government. So as many as 40 monks are said to have lost their life during the revolutions as the junta cracked down the protesting monks. As the memory of the revolution lingers fresh in Burmese memory, this evacuation once again raises questions about the interference of the government in Buddhist majority Burma. This is another country where religion has become part of the state agenda or state ideology. I mean, not just towards Buddhism, also towards the Muslim Rohingya. So I think that's where the Malaysia and Burma has some sort of similarity. So I mean, in Burma, religion is definitely a very sensitive issue to the extent that the state has taken charge on who should be what, and they even is trying to propose a bill where someone cannot have an interfaith marriage. It means that if you are a Buddhist, you fell in love with a Muslim, you are not allowed to marry the person. It's similar to what happened recently in Malaysia regarding on a Hindu wedding being crashed by the Islamic department in Malaysia, where in Selangor, and at that time they claimed that the bride was a Muslim, so she's not allowed to marry a Hindu. It's sad to me personally, it's very sad when religion has become state ideology instead of like a personal faith between the person and directly towards God. I don't think that state should meddle with the affairs of a person's faith. The state should, in fact, meddle more with a person's well-being when it comes to physical well-being, especially providing universal healthcare, universal education, pave a better, transportation system and all that, and ensure that the political system is, functioning well, and as well as the economic system. I think that should be the main role of the state. Anyway, moving on to the next news, also reported by BBC. In India, hang woman rape claims in Uttar Pradesh. So the story goes, a woman's body has been found hanging from a tree in a village in Uttar Pradesh. So there were medical reports about her death. And the next one will be civil servants must gain people trust. It's actually a headline from the Brunei Times. So it was reported that among civil servants, trust, honesty, responsibility, and accountability are some of the attributes of a dedicated public servant. The Deputy Minister of the Prime Minister Office, PMO, said yesterday. It's interesting because I think this one is not just towards civil servant. I think trust, honesty, responsibility, and accountability should be attributes for, everyone. I mean, everyone should have those kind of attributes, especially in the workplace. So anyway, go back to the story. The chairman of the Public Service Commission, SPA, Pangeran Datuk Paduka Haji Maidin, Pangeran Haji Hashim, who read out the speech on the behalf of Datuk Paduka Haji Abdul Wahab June 8th at the seminar entitled Strengthening Integrity in the Public Service yesterday at the banquet hall of the Prime Minister Office said work ethics should practice by public servants at all levels, especially by the leaders, as any lapse of shortcomings among them can set a bad example for others. Personals of non-compliance with the set rules of government and public service may reflect weakness in leadership, which can affect public confidence in the service provided. He urged public servants to work diligently to raise their ranking under the Transparency International, an international body which assesses the transparency and integrity of the public service in the country. And I think this is something that is applaudable towards the Bruneian government. I think for them to recognize the work of Transparency International, to actually ensure that the public servants to be on par with the standards of Transparency International is definitely something that it should be commendable, and something that I think should be emulated as well for any individuals. Anyway, that's all for our news today. Please follow us on Twitter, durianasean.com, as well as our Facebook, durianasean.com as well. And you can log on to our website, www.durianasean.com, to get more news about Southeast Asia. And also you can always connect with us and send us an email if you have any views that you want to add to us. Comment in our Facebook. For email, you can send to my email. It's Arlene, ARLENE, at durianfm.com, DURIANFM.com. And stay tuned. We will continue with more news, more discussion, by the way, for Blast from the Grassroots. This time we will talk about the issue of transgender Muslim women in Malaysia. Do they have the right to be whoever they are?